All right. So there we go. There's recording. First thing I want you to think about is what's the difference between what's project management? What's the difference between a project and operations, like the operations that your business is involved with on a regular basis? What's the difference between operations and projects? You got any thoughts on that, guys? You can either talk or chat, whichever you'd prefer.
Operations is consistent. It keeps going, and projects have a specific end time and beginning time.
Very good, Sharice. Yeah, a project is um, a specially funded, time frame based event that has a goal that's usually focused on the mission and goals of the company. It's going to have a specific outcome that's expected. It's going to have its own budget. It's going to have its own, it's almost like its own entity. It's own thing. So, what you have to think of is for a project, your project's going to be something that will allow you to improve the business in some shape or form, where operations are just your day-to-day activities. If you manufacture widgets, your operations are manufacturing widgets. And then if you're going to do a project in the widget company, Widgets of America, you're going to do a project that might be focused on reducing overhead costs for your widgets or finding new methodologies of saving money in the production process or anything like that. It could be a short-term or a long-term project. Very good. Okay, so let's move on. How this course proceeds is the one thing I want you to remember about this course is you have templates. You have templates for the charter and scope. You have a template for the tools matrix. You will have a template in task 2 for the communication plan. And those are the main templates you're going to have for this course. You also have the case studies you need to download and read. You also have the rubric, which is in each assessment in the assessment tab in each task, you're going to have a rubric that's listed there that's going to tell you exactly what you need to do to pass at the competent level. And that's what we want you to do is pass at the competent level. So make sure that you are doing that and moving forward the way you need to make sure the course, you're getting the material done the way it needs to be done. Now there's two textbooks. There's the Project Management PMBOK, which is Project Management Body of Knowledge, and then there's also a Project Management textbook by Harold Kurtzner. The nice thing about these textbooks is they're big. Both of them have quite a few pages, but the thing about that is we are not expecting you to read these textbooks cover to cover. You're not even expected to buy a copy of one or the other or both. The thing you're going to do is you're going to use the links that are built into the course's study to go to the specific areas in the text where you should read about specific topics. And that's what you're going to read. And if it's something that doesn't involve what you're currently working on, you're not going to need to go read it. So you're going to want to follow those links in the course of study. As you're working through the course, make sure you're looking at that left frame because the left frame in the course of study is where you've got the topics listed. Once you open up the topic areas, what happens is there are informational pieces in the middle and there'll be links to specific reading sections that you'll want to read. So you want to make sure that you're working not only with the documents you download, but also still working back and forth with the course of study. You want to make sure you read both case studies. I guess I'm jumping ahead here. You want to read both case studies cover to cover. GenRaise is probably around 25, 30 pages, where Zema Translations is 50 pages. I won't lie. They're big case studies, but we need you to read the whole case study. And I recommend you read them more than once. You're looking for key facts and things that you might want to keep notes on that take place in the narrative that you may need for writing your paper. So make sure that you read those case studies and take good notes. And like I said, download and read all the rubrics. It's not in TaskStream anymore. It's built right into your course. And read all the templates and the available information from your course of study. So when you're looking at a project, like I said, we talked earlier, is a one-time activity that you're going to do that's going to accomplish specific activities, has its own specific budget, specific goals, and activities that you have to do. So when you're looking at the project, you're looking at what usually happens in a business is they come to the new fiscal year and they come up with a figure and they announce to the company's employees that they have, say, $100,000 that they're going to invest into projects this year, and they invite anyone in the company who has an idea for a project to write up a proposal. to submit a proposal to talk about what their project would do to help the company and what kind of things it might involve. That proposal will be the first attempt that you're going to take to get your project approved. At the proposal stage, the management's going to look at all the proposals and it's going to pick from the proposal the best projects that are well suited to the company's mission and goals, the focus for the year for what they want the projects to accomplish and things like that. And then what's going to happen is they'll come back to you and say, okay, we like your proposal. Now I want you to write a charter. The charter you're going to write is like a contract between you and management that tells management, you know how to do this project, and here's the information I'm going to follow when I do it. The scope itself, once the chart is approved, then you write the scope, and the scope's got more specifics. Both of those documents have deliverables and acceptance criteria in them, and you can use this deliverables and acceptance criteria section from the charter and paste that into the scope document to make sure that your deliverables and acceptance criteria match for the two pieces. You have key milestone dates, and also in task 3, you've got some metrics you need to take a look at for measuring success. There's other steps and documents that can vary by industry. One thing we always tell students is if you're in the military or have been in the military, you've done projects in the military, you'll know darn well once you look at this stuff that this is nothing like what you did in the military at all, because they have their own documents, their own procedures, their own processes, and you definitely do not follow that here in the course. Same thing with other industries like healthcare management or engineering, things like that. Documents going to vary by industry, but they all serve the same purpose of getting that project done successfully. Okay, so the Generates Human Resource Information case study. What is the story on that? That's an IT project to manage because it is um, looking at a company who currently has no HR software to manage their activities. They, well, I'll get into it more and more, but how many, have either of you managed an IT project in the past? Okay, well, that's fine. And like I said, it's not expected. IT projects are their own unique animal, I would say. IT projects are the kind of thing that they have a specific process you go through, especially when you're looking to develop or purchase or install a new software for a new purpose or new activity in your company. In this case, GenRaise has no HR software. In the case study, they tell you they just installed the financial software this summer to help with their budgeting and their accounting processes, and that's helped a lot and it saved them a lot of money, which is why the Rory Genhart, the company president, is really pushing to get this HR software figured out. But there's certain difficulties and successes that you think of with an IT project. Difficulties can be system integration, communication between different types of software, database building that can sometimes pose a challenge, and there's a lot of different things. But the successes themselves are one of those things that once you have an IT project done successfully, the feeling's pretty cool. I've worked in IT for over 20 years and I've worked on many projects, and it's the kind of thing that um, nothing can be said for having a successful project. There's nothing like it. So for task 1, there are 6 sections with sources at the end of each task as an optional thing you have to fill in. The sources are basically anything you might have used for the project that or the tasks that is a document that's not one of the 2 textbooks. If you have an article, if you have outside sources that you use, you want to list those in the sources in APA format. And if you don't know APA format or need some assistance with that, you can talk to the Writing Center and they'll help you out, make sure you're on the right path. But these are the main pieces. You've got A, Generates Tools Matrix, B is the project charter, C is the scope, D is the dictionary, E is the scheduling report or Gantt chart, F is implications. Now, part A, the Generates Tools Matrix, is what we'll talk about first. And this is one part of the assignment that gives students fits because they look at it, they look at the template, and they go, I don't know anything about tools. I don't know what they're talking about here. I have no idea what this is about. And that's when they stop working on the course. They just say, I don't know anything about this, so I'm not going to work on it. And they walk away and work on another course. It proves to be one of the biggest stumbling blocks for our students in this course right now. And we want to make sure we make it so you're not so intimidated by it. The tools matrix You want to use the template, the format you've been given in the course, and a tool is anything that you're going to use that's going to help you get the project done successfully. It could be a book, it could be the PMBOK, it could be the company's project manager, it could be minutes from a meeting, it could be notes from focus groups, it can be one-on-one interviews, which you have in the case study. At the back of the case study, you have interviews one-on-one with a lot of people from the company. You could use historical documents from past projects. In this case, you've just done the financial piece this summer, this last year, so it'd probably be a really good resource to see how the project went by looking at the historical records from that financial project to get some ideas of maybe some tips you might want or things you might want to avoid happening in this new project. So, you want to make sure that you're going to pick tools that are going to help. In the PMBOK, there is on page 3, sometimes page 2, sometimes page 4, but at the beginning of each chapter, there is a list of the different sections of the chapter they're going to cover, and the second section in each one of those boxes is called Tools and Techniques. They talk about the chapter, they talk about what tools they're going to use to teach that material for that chapter. I really, I really want to encourage you. Again, this is where we talk about going back to the course of study. And within the course of study, on the left-hand frame, let me see if I can share my screen for a second. Get the course of study up here and help you a little bit. There we go. Let's see, share content, screen 2. Yep, there we go. I want to share screen 2. Nope. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so you should be seeing my homepage at MGT2 right now. This is the home page, and in this left-hand frame, you've got a whole listing of things to look at. You've got the introduction, you've got the cohort offerings, which you've obviously found because you're here today. There is different topics: preparing for success, project management methodologies, interaction, or integration management, planning, scheduling, organizing, communicating, monitoring, controlling, and final steps. Now, when you're looking for preparing for success, they talk about the learning resources that are available and the topics and pacing they expect that you should follow for the course. This course will take you anywhere from 6 to 8 weeks to do on most cases, depending upon how well you understand it and how much trouble you run into as you're writing. I want you to know that as an instructor, I welcome, appointments on my calendar, from my students anytime. As long as I'm in the office, I want to help people, and I want to make sure that if you need assistance with the course, you don't hesitate reaching out and setting up an appointment with me, because I'll meet with you as many times as you need to get through the course successfully. Now, we were talking about the beginning of the course, and we're talking about project management. We're talking about the tools. And within this section that's project management processes, down here you have knowledge areas for the project management processes. Here are all the management areas that are in the template for the tools matrix. So you can go to each one of these chapters and kind of look at the information on how they explain what the area is that you're working in and what you might need to do. So, like I said, it's very important you go back and forth between your material you've downloaded and you're reading online, and then also the courses study, because it'll truly help you. Okay, so we want to go back to the other screen. I'm going to stop sharing that. Go back to the presentation. Sweet, that went slick. Yay. And like I said, first day using this tool in a cohort, so I'm kind of excited when I see things go well. I'm sure it's going to give you a chuckle, but it really does make me happy when it works well. But you're going to pick tools. Okay, you're going to use tools in that tools matrix where you're going to come up with, under, say, cost management. Under the cost management area, if I was doing this project, one of the places I'd list it as a tool in the cost management areas, I would list a subject matter expert or expert judgment. And that's going to be someone who has knowledge of GenRay's budgeting system, such as someone from their financial office or accounting, who can help me draw up the budget for GenRaise for this project, because I don't know GenRaise financial processes. I don't know their budgeting scheme, and I would want to make sure that everything's done like GenRaise wants it to be. So I would bring someone in as an expert from GenRaise to do it to help me with it. So that's what I would put down as my justification. So the tool would be a subject matter expert, and the justification would be I need someone from GenRaise to make sure that my budgeting of this project is done correctly. That's simple. For each one of the tools that are listed in the tools matrix, you've got 10 slots. We want you to come up with at least 2 tools for each management area. And then in the last column, you need to justify each tool. Make it so it's easier for the evaluator to see the 2 tools, like even if you have to skip a line between the two. And the same thing with the justification. If you can manage even maybe making bulleted lists in your tools justification area, it would help the evaluator understand what justification goes with what. Anytime when you're working in the course, this course is particular on any of the assignments, any way that you can make it easier for the evaluator to find your material and understand what part of your assignment applies to what part they're grading, the faster and easier it's going to be for them to grade. So always tell everybody, tables, bulleted lists, things that help you organize your paper better. And then also when you take those tables and bulleted lists and you take them and go ahead and it helps you, write less. You don't have to write as much. You don't have to use complete sentences when you do a table or bulleted list. And it definitely helps you get the paper done faster. And usually, it's quicker to grade when the evaluator can quickly find, what they need to grade for you. So just keep that in mind as you're writing your paper. Okay, the next piece after the tools matrix, you got the charter. And the one thing I want to say about the tools matrix is you may want to leave that till towards the end of the project or the task because you don't have to do it first. You don't have to do any of these pieces in order. It's just a matter of making sure that you know what you're doing. And if the tools matrix is going to be easier and better for you to fill out later when you're working after you're done working on the project, then wait and do it later. There's no problem with that. But the next piece is the charter. Part B is the charter. And like I said, the charter is kind of like a contract between you and the project sponsor. In this case, we suggest using Rory Genhart as your sponsor, but it's the contract between you and your sponsor that tells him or her that you understand the project, you know what the objectives are, the funding, you know everything that you need to know. You need to have the charter approved. Once your charter is done, it's going to be approved by whoever's going to be your project sponsor. In this case, I would recommend putting down Rory Genhart as your sponsor. You don't have to fake his signature or anything. A typed in signature is just fine for this project, but I would put him down as a sponsor. Now, like I said before, the charter is the first document you do that's officially saying, okay, the boss gave me permission to do this project. So the charter is going to be the first document, and it's going to be designed for your project sponsor, but it's also designed to be a project document that's going to go out to management because the people in the company need to know what's going on as far as management does. And management's going to want to know what projects are being funded that year and know about what the projects are all about. That's why they have you write a charter because that can be shared with the projects, the administration of the company, and that help to inform them as to what projects are taking place that fiscal year. So after you've done the charter, and remember, the charter is for your management audience, then once the charter is approved, then you move on to what's called the scope. And the charter and scope are going to have a lot of similar parts. You're going to feel like you're redundant, the papers are redundant. You're copying and re-saying the same thing more than once. But the charter is a document that's designed for management, while the scope is a document that's designed for the people who are going to be working on the project to help get them informed about what's going to take place, what's going to go on, when it's going to happen, what part they're going to have in it, where they need to be focused on different activities. So the scope is going to be something that's going to definitely be a better document to keep people informed what's going on. And it's going to have a couple different pieces in it that the charter doesn't have that are either integral to the project being successful. Okay, so you're going to have requirements, you're going to have statement of work, you're going to have the same deliverables and acceptance criteria like you had in the charter. But there's 2 documents that you have templates in the scope that are separate templates or templates built into the scope document. That's the work breakdown structure and the risks and constraints tables. You want to use those templates as they're written, fill them out for what the what the template says it needs to have done. The WBS or work breakdown structure is basically it's your calendar, it's your list of tasks in calendar form or in chronological listing, not calendar form, but in chronological listing showing what needs to happen, what you're going to do with the project from beginning to end to get everything done. And you've got all the tasks and then all the tasks organized into work packages being an organization structure for parts of the tasks or parts of the project. So your WBS is going to list all the activities that are going to take place from the beginning to the end of the project. You have boundaries and assumptions, things that may be um, you want people to be aware of. Like I always think about people and companies that they try to make deals like between departments. Like if you've got a department that isn't HR and with you coming in with a new HR software, chances are pretty good you'll probably have to replace some of the computers in the HR department because they might have computers that may not be up to the challenge of this new software, the processor speed or the version of the software, the operating system. So you may have to upgrade some computers in the HR department. And if you do, I always talk about how other departments go, hey, they're buying new computers and they're probably getting a really good price because they're going out for bid. Maybe I can talk to the department that's running this project and see if they'll put a few computers on their doc or their procurement order for us, and I'll even pay them for them. I'll, extend the money, transfer the money from our account to theirs, so they don't have to pay for them. They just have to get us their price break, and that's the kind of stuff you'd put down as boundaries and assumptions. Boundaries, we're not going to do anything than what the project asks us to do, and assumptions, we're going to be expecting the company to support us and give us an office to work in and maybe give us support staff to help with the paperwork of the project. And, there's certain things that you're going to expect the company's going to provide for you or do about the project. Now, under the risks and constraints, that's where you've got another template. The risks and constraints is a risk management document is needed in every project you ever do. Because we want you before the project starts and during the project to be thinking about all the things that could happen that could, throw a monkey wrench into your project. All the risks are going to be things that could happen that could deter you from getting finished. There are positive risks. Risks that are positive are called opportunities, but we mainly want to hear about, what kind of risks do you anticipate possibly could happen? It could include things like, say, in one of the case studies, Zema case study, they actually order computers and then there's a fire at the company that builds the computers. That's probably not something you'd think of about a risk ahead of time, but it definitely delays the project. And the thing about the risk template or the risk management document, it stays open all through the project so that you're constantly monitoring the project. And if new things happen that might be a risk, you definitely want to list them in the risk document and talk about what you're going to do in reaction to those risks. Constraints are basically anything that's going to be a barrier you want to put around your project. Constraints are things that are going to be a challenge for your project to finish. Usually most students don't list a whole lot in the constraints area in the scope, but make sure you work through the scope templates. And when you're working on the charter, use the charter templates. The one thing I forgot to mention too is the templates for the charter and the scope on their second page has a table of contents. And we want you to use that table of contents for both documents, kind of like your writing prompts. So if it says to write purpose, you put a header in that says purpose and you write about the purpose. You put in, deliverables and acceptance criteria. You put that header in and then you put in a table of the deliverables and acceptance criteria. We want you to make sure you follow that table of contents because that's what you need to write. That's what the evaluators are expecting to see when you turn in your paper, and that's what they're going to grade you on is those items. So you make sure that you've got those items included in your paper. Okay, everybody going okay so far? Everybody getting everything they need so far? Okay, we'll keep going here. Now we're going to go into a little bit more visual information because we talked about the work breakdown structure. This is a sample of one of those boxes in the textbook in the PEMBOK. You see where they're talking about developing the project team. They have inputs, which are, things that they need to know, staff assignments, management plan, resource calendars. Then the second piece is always going to be your tools and techniques. One way of project, let's see, what's the first one? Project integration. Integrating the project, you might want to consider group trainings, team building activities, ground rules. You might want to consider having to integrate your project some sort of software that you use, like Teams, Skype, SharePoint for sharing files, for having virtual meetings, things like that. So those are all tools you might consider for that tools matrix. And I just want to make sure we took a second to look at these. But also, the work breakdown structure needs to be organized in a detailed list of all tasks in the project. You're going to put the tasks together in light groupings called work packages, like things that are going to be done together for a certain part of the project. Those are going to be part of a work package. For example, if you were going to go to GenRaise and you were going to find a room in their office space to store your server, you're going to get a new server for this HR software. And rather than just leaving it in the closet in the HR manager's office, you want to find someplace where you can have a dedicated server room at GenRaise. So you find that room. You find a room that's a storeroom. It's kind of beat up. The walls look kind of crappy, and there you need more electrical network jacks in there. The floor looks gross because it's been a storage room. So you decide you're going to go remodel that server room so you can put the new server in there. So that would be the name of the work package, remodeling server room. Then the tasks underneath remodeling the server room would be the first task, 1.1, would be, and I'm just using one as an example. It doesn't have to be the first task, but you'd patch or replace drywall. If you've got walls that have holes in them or big messes, you'd either replace the whole drywall board or you'd replace parts of it, patch it. If you're removing drywall board, the next thing I would definitely do is make sure that before you put the new drywall board up, the stone board or whatever you want to call it, I would use that time to put in any new network and electrical jacks you need to have put in, because I'll tell you, if you've ran wires in any kind of job, running wires between two wall boards is a lot more difficult than putting it up inside of an open stud wall. So that's why I always say, if you've got the walls down a little bit, do your electrical and network jacks when their walls are open. It's a lot easier. Okay, so then after you get the drywall fixed and patched and you get your stuff, your network jacks, your electrical outlets fixed, you get your drywall back up, everything's ready to paint. So the first thing you need to do is prime it, put some primer on all that new drywall, and you prime the old walls to maybe you get some sort of some paint that's going to cover marks and stuff or grease spots. There's paint out there that you can put in a primer that'll go over anything. So you're going to prime the wall, then you paint the wall, and then the last thing you would do is replace the carpeting or the flooring, because that way if you spill or splash paint on the floor, it's not going to hurt because you're going to replace the flooring anyhow. But that's the sequence in which those tasks need to be done. You're not going to paint the walls and then tear out the drywall. That'd be ridiculous. So I'm going to show you here an example of a work breakdown structure. It has 4 columns. This is exactly like the template that is in the case study, or in your templates, I mean. So you've got 4 columns. You have task ID number, task name, responsible, and deliverables. Task ID number, when you have a work package, you start off with this top level of the point 0. Point zero, point zero. These are the work package groupings. And then under each work package, you have these tasks. So we're going to do a site survey at GenRaise. Well, actually, this is a different case study, but we're going to do a site survey looking for a room for the server room. We're going to visit the site. We're going to look at blueprints, and we're going to have discussions about the budget, because all of this is going to involve what room we choose for the server room. Because if we pick a room that's going to cost a lot to get ready, we might not want to go with that room, but we also might want to look at the blueprints so we know we're going somewhere where we can connect into network jacks, an electrical jack wiring pretty easy, one that's got good heat, ventilation, and air conditioning so the temperature's consistent in the room. There's a lot of things to consider when you look at those blueprints. But this is an example of a work breakdown structure with 3 work packages, and under each work package, there just coincidentally happens to be 3 tasks. The responsible party is the person you put in charge of that work package. You're going to put someone in charge, responsible party of each work package, so that you have delegated responsibility for that work package to someone in the company that you can count on to manage the project part, to answer questions from the people who are working on it, and come to you if they have questions. And also you can go to them and ask for a report and get questions you have about their work answered. So you're always going to have someone responsible for each work package, and it's not always going to be you. You as project manager could be in charge of some work packages, but not all of them. You definitely don't want to be juggling 10 different balls for different parts of the project. You want to be able to oversee what's going on. I always talk about the project manager is almost like the conductor of an orchestra, or possibly the coach of a football team, who stands back and manages people who do the parts of the project for them. And that's what you've got to be able to do as a successful project manager is delegate authority well and be able to communicate with your teams very well. The last column is deliverable. And the deliverable is going to be what is going to be the end result of the work package, or you can have a deliverable for the task. At this level, the work breakdown structure, we just put deliverables for the high level project parts, the work packages. We didn't go down to each individual piece and put in a task at this point in time. But you could have deliverables at each task level too. Okay, just a second, I gotta find out where I'm at over here. Okay, 12. Okay, now the next piece after you get done with the scope is called Part D WBS Dictionary. WBS, again, work breakdown structure. You just did this work breakdown structure here. I always tell my students, this is the template that's in the scope. After you get this done, copy this table, paste it in a new document, turn it landscape orientation, and name the file WBS Dictionary because according to the rubric, the WBS Dictionary, it's an extension of the WBS to become like a one-stop shop document that holds all the information about who's working on what part of the project when. And if somebody has questions about what's going on, they can go to this document and find out just about anything they need to know. It really comes in handy for those bosses who actually share their staff with the project. They release some of their staff to your project, and then they start getting a little bit antsy when their people aren't back when they expect them. So they can go to this work breakdown structure dictionary and get a good idea when their people are going to be done and when they can expect them to come back to their home office and be back working for them. You've got resources and assignments, you got timelines, everything's in that work breakdown structure dictionary. And I'll show you an example in just a second. So here's the first four columns. So if we cover this one side of the screen, you can actually see task ID number, task name, responsible party, and deliverables. This is exactly what was in the WBS slide. Okay. You've moved that forward and added four more columns. You add the task definition. You do a little description, couple sentences of what this task is doing or what the work package is doing. If there's any task predecessors, you're going to list those here, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But then you also put in team member assignments or what the rubric calls sufficient labor assignment, sufficient labor resources assigned to get the project done successfully. And then the duration of the task, how many hours? It's not really days, and this is kind of incorrect. We should put down 8 hours, 16 hours, whatever it's going to take, 20, 21 hours. I mean, you want to have hours instead of days. You're going to know a day is typically always going to be 8 hours, but if you put the hours in, it's going to allow you to do the scheduling a little better. So this is what your work breakdown structure dictionary looks like. You see what I meant about turning it sideways and putting in the four extra columns. Task predecessors. Task predecessors used to be a requirement in the rubric, and for some reason they've disappeared off of the digital rubric that's out there, but they're still a very important part of any project. A predecessor is a task that has to be done before another task can start. And in the case of the server room, like I said before, if you're going to remodel the server room, you're not going to paint the walls first and then tear out the old drywall. That would be ridiculous. So, like in this case, it talks about visiting the site, reviewing the blueprints, and then budget discussions. The predecessors, before you can have your budget discussions, you've got to visit the site and review blueprints and decide what room you're looking to turn into the server room, because you're not going to be able to decide the budget for the project until you know what room you're using and what has to be done to that room. Make sense so far, guys? I'm not losing you. Everybody's doing good, I hope. Okay, so predecessors down here for the upgrade. Review high-level alternatives. 1.3, the budget discussions have to take place before they can start talking about high-level alternatives for upgrade. Finalize the budget once you know what you're going to need for the software, and then choose a high-level plan, figure out what you're going to do. And most tasks have predecessors, but not all. Okay? So the predecessors, while they're missing from the rubric, they still should be considered and put into the WBS dictionary. After you get your dictionary done, the next thing you're going to do is your scheduling chart or Gantt chart. The Gantt chart is basically calendarizing your project starting from the first date of the project, which the GenRaise project starts on February 1st and needs to be done by the end of the year. So the calendar for GenRaise is going to go February 1st through December 31st. When you start your calendar, in a software, first thing you want to do is tell it the day you're starting the project. So you need to put all the calendar tasks in the project. The software we recommend you use for this is a free software that you can download from the sourceforge.net website. I'm going to put that down here just a second. Where can I type to everyone? Yeah, okay, there we go. Okay, sourceforge.net is the website, and the software is called Project Libre. And it's a software that's free to download. It's project management software. It's got a lot of whistles and bells that might be interesting to use. But the big thing we want you to use it for is to build your Gantt chart. You go into the Gantt chart part of it, you tell it right off the bat, file new. And when you tell it you want to start a new project, the first thing it asks is for you to name the project, give it a title. And then after that, it asks you for the start date. So you put the name of the title of the project in, and then you put the start date in, February 1st, and then hits, enter. And then at that point in time, don't ever think about doing anything with the calendar after that, because what you're going to do is when you put the tasks in and you use that work breakdown structure dictionary's durations here, and you're going to put in how many hours or how many days it's going to take into that Gantt chart, then the software is going to automatically update the calendar. So if you do the project and you start talking about one part of the project is going to take 3 days or 21 hours, and you put that in. So you put it in for February 1st. That's the first task. It's going to take 3 days. So it starts on February 1st. And the next task, when you put that task in, the calendar will automatically have it start on February 4th. So it does the calendaring for you. Let it do its work. Don't put in any dates manually, because if you do, you're going to mess up the calendar's function and it won't work right. And something will break, and then your calendar on the right side is going to be messed up. Let me show you what the Gantt chart looks like. This wasn't done in Project Libre. This was actually done in Microsoft Project. If you have access to Microsoft Project and you've used it before and know how to use it, we recommend you can use it. But I'll tell you right now, we don't have time to teach you how to use Microsoft Project. Project Libre, we could help you with that. There's good tutorials online and YouTube to learn how to use Project Libre, and we're more than happy to help you with it. But Microsoft Project, a lot of students think that's a good software to use, so they sign up for a 30-day free trial, and then they don't get their project done in the 30 days, and then they're really stuck with having to buy the software. We don't want that to happen. So use Project Libre. This is what a sample Gantt chart looks like. You put in, and this is actually the work breakdown structure from the sample case study we send you. This is vendor contract negotiations. You ask for a quote. You send out a note to all your possible vendors for a quote about what you want to order. You review the quotes after they all come in, and then you finalize the contract, decide who to buy from. You see here, this column is predecessors. In Project Libre, if it's not in there, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to right click on this list of tasks or columns at the top, and then say Insert Column, and you're going to have a whole list. You'll have to scroll all the way down to the P's to get predecessor installed or set up here. But the predecessor, once you go into Project Libre, it does it by line number. So in other words, this one says 8. This one's going to have this task. 2.3 has to be done before 3.1 can be done. But it works by the line numbers in this first column, not by the task ID numbers. If you want to include those in there, you type them in when you put in your listing. Some people have really good success to copy and pasting from your WBS when it comes to this typing here. If you have success doing it, more power to you. You also have to remember that you may need to indent. Like you might write this down and then put this stuff in, and it's all over here and it's not in a group and on a work package. Then you have to take each one of these items and indent them, indent them, indent them. And then when you get to this one, you got to outdent it. So you start a new work package. That's the one of the things that you have to make sure you're aware of and you pay attention to, because that will make a difference in how your calendar looks. Now, the calendar itself, the Project Libre software is set to show you what the critical path is on the calendar. And a critical path is basically the path the project has. That's the longest time frame it's going to take to get the project done. And that's built from taking into consideration all of those predecessor tasks that have to be done in order, that are going to have to be part of the schedule, done in order. So what we want you to do is, if you look at your Gantt chart and the calendar as you're building it, you'll see when you put those predecessors in, the listings over here will turn pink, like pinkish purple. I think they're purple to start with, and they'll turn kind of burgundy pink. They'll change colors because that's where your critical path is, and that's the thing the evaluators are looking for is they want to see a critical path evident on your calendar. Now, your critical path is the only thing they're looking for in your Gantt chart, but you got to make sure you have one. So you got to make sure you get the software set up to do that critical path, which requires you to have a start date, no dates messed with, and have predecessors involved, and that'll give you the critical path. Next, after you get done with the Gantt chart, the last part of task one is a section called implications. And the implications is kind of like a justification slash reflection back on what you've done in this project. How did you set up the project? How did you plan to do things? You know, what kind of tasks did you come up with? And the thing is your decisions are going to affect the project success. You know, you made a decision about this, or this, and you did it because you think it's going to help the project. That's what the implication section wants you to do, to reflect back on the decisions you've made in your D and E, your WBS dictionary, and E, your Gantt chart, and how those decisions are going to help the project be more successful. You want to talk logically and in order, you know, chronological order as to what decision you're talking about so the evaluators can keep track of where you are in your paper. But that's what you're going to do is basically you're going to, you know, justify what you just did. That's what they're looking for is justification of your work you've just put together for the project. Now, that's getting real close to the end here. Let's take a look. The implications is the last part, and then after that you have your sources. Now, we talked about sources earlier. You don't have to have sources. You can have sources. Writing sources for this paper would possibly be a really good introduction to writing APA format sources, which you'll do more and more of as time goes on and as you work through the courses in the master's program. Right now, at this point in time, we're not too fussy about you having sources for this task, but you can for practice. You need to make sure that if you do use sources, you do APA format. If you have problems with that, go to the Writing Center. They've got a lot of good resources online that you can download and read to make sure you're doing APA format. So that's it. That's it for today. Any questions over any part of the task I covered or questions about oversight of the IT project and also anything else about Project Libre or Microsoft Project, I'm going to give you my email address. And I would ask that you guys send me an email requesting, oh, just a minute, I can't type and talk today for some reason, requesting a copy of the video that I recorded from today's session, because that way I can have your email address in my email and just click on it and reply. And I'll send you the link to the recording of today's session once I have it fixed and rendered. And then I'm also going to send you a list of files. We have what we call our sample case study in this course. That is a case study I wrote about an incident that happened at a previous job. And we wrote it up, made it a real short case study, but we did it with enough information so we could do tasks 1 and 2. So Rob and I put together this case study, you know, the sample, and then we put together tasks 1 and task 2, everything except implications. We didn't do implications in task 1, and there aren't any sources, but we did the assignment so you can see using a different case study how someone else would write out the assignments to just give you an idea of something to look at to make you feel a little more comfortable with the progress you're making. The last thing I want to say is to make sure that you know how to set up appointments with me. You can go into my signature file when you get the email from me and just click on, you know, set an appointment with me, and you'll go to my time trade calendar, and then you can pick a time slot and a duration of the task or duration of our meeting. Students can call me or talk to me as many times as they need to get successfully through the course. I don't care if I talk to you every day of the week, it doesn't matter. You know, if that's what it takes to help you, I will do it. But, you know, you're not going to get anywhere if you run into a wall or have a problem and you don't you know, set up an appointment, because no one else is out there that's going to help you. You might have somebody at work that does projects, but they're not going to know what this course is unless they've been through this course at WGU. So you want to make sure Rob and I are here as course instructors, and we're here for you to use us and use us as a great resource. So don't hesitate to speak out anytime you have questions you need to have asked. Okay, any other last minute questions? Please, like I said, make sure you send me an email reminding me that you attended the cohort and that you want a copy of the recording. And then when I respond with a copy of the recording, I'll try to remember to send you the sample case study files. If I forget, send me another email and jog my memory, okay? Next week's cohort, which is right here, next week we'll talk about task 2. This is task 2. And I want you to think about this while you're writing task 1 because a lot of what you think about and do in task 1, you actually just write about in task 2, such as, an org chart. Who do you put into work on the project? What roles, team members, and justification? Who did you put in what position on the project and why? That's what this part is, this A1, 2, and 2A. Then the stakeholder communication plan, that's a new piece. But all this stuff in A, you've already done. You just need to think about it and write it down. And then B and C we'll talk about. C, 3, and 3A are you imagining the project's done and you need to come up, discuss topics about what went well and didn't go well in the project. But we'll talk about this next week. I just wanted to show you what splash screen of what next week's project's going to be. So I'm going to quit the recording now.